I want to show you 5 different tips that I wish I had been told from the beginning when I started painting with gouache, and I think these 5 different tips are going to help elevate your gouache painting and hopefully help you approach gouache in a more confident way and help you feel more satisfied with your paintings and illustrations. I'll list all my materials below, but I tend to use a variety of 3 or 4 different brands of gouache: Winsor and Newton, Holbein and My Mary. For these cactus illustrations, I'm actually going to use just the primary cyan, yellow and magenta with white, and I like doing this when I'm feeling like I don't want tons of colours to choose from and I want to colour mix myself. But if you're starting with gouache, please don't feel overwhelmed by thinking that you only have to colour mix from the primary colours or thinking like you need to have 100 different colours. I'll get into this a bit later on. So I always start my illustrations with a guiding sketch, but definitely don't go into tons of detail, as I really like to do the initial mapping of the subject with paint, and the pencil is just there to guide me a bit. And before we get into the tips, a huge thank you to our sponsor for today's video, Ana Luisa. You'll know by now that I absolutely love their jewellery. They're practically the only jewellery I'm wearing nowadays. They sent me this really cool chunky rope ring, which I'm styling with my other Ana Luisa rings, and a really nice chunky bangle. And I don't normally wear that many bracelets, but this is such a statement piece that I feel will look really elegant with like a nighttime look. I also love that these pieces won't tarnish. All my Ana Luisa jewellery has stayed intact, and they're also currently having a sale with up to 35% off, so be sure to check out my link in bio to see my jewellery pick and make the most of the limited time offer. Thanks again, Ana Luisa, for sponsoring this video. I so appreciate it. Okay, so my first tip is you're going to think in layers with gouache, and your first layer is going to be your ugliest and most simple one. It doesn't matter if you make mistakes in this layer, as you can see. This is your mapping layer. It's giving you the initial shape of your illustration or subject that you're painting, and you're just blocking out really simple shapes at first. It doesn't matter that your colours aren't perfectly matched. You're going to be concentrating on the general colour that you're seeing, and it's going to be pretty flat. There's no real gradient or light source on this first layer. It's just a bunch of shapes put together. Once I have my flat first layer, I'll start adding in very basic shadows on top, and this initial stage is just to map out where the shadows are. Again, I'm not concentrating on like colour likeness. I just want to see that contrast so I can begin to build on top of that. As the first layer is thin, it will dry quickly, and I can begin to add in lighter colours like I'm doing for the flowers, adding some basic highlights. And this is where you can really see that a detailed pencil sketch isn't going to help you, because with this approach, most of the pencil marks are covered, but there's still a lot of layers to go, so you're really drawing with the paint. The second tip I wish I had learned from the start is to embrace the streakiness of gouache paint strokes. You can see at this stage that I'm really not worrying about smoothing out the paint, and I'm actually wanting the marks to show. Now, there was a time where I would try to paint the background like I'm doing now in a way where I would concentrate so hard on making it completely smooth and opaque and get everything looking seamless. But the more I moved away from that, the more I found and am finding my style. It's like brushstrokes are your handwriting, and so every artist is going to have unique handwriting, so unique brushstrokes and marks on the page. And smoothing over the paint over and over used to frustrate me a lot, and I ended up feeling like everything looked too stiff. So I'm really embracing and have been embracing the brushstrokes of gouache, and I think if you feel like you want to go on that journey of embracing it too, you'll probably find that you discover your style a lot quicker than if you're trying to get really structured, seamless, smooth paint on the paper. Okay, my next tip is to have a strong light source in your references, and if you don't have it, make it up. Having high contrast between light and shadow in your paintings and illustrations not only makes it more visually interesting to look at, but it's actually easier to paint because you have such a wide range of values that you can see the obvious difference between the different colors and shades or values that you need. Normally, I'll push the contrast of light and dark in my illustrations even more than my references. I find that the end result is a lot more appealing and vibrant. Okay, fourth is don't skip on the details. This is probably more of a stylistic choice, but I actually really found that I benefited from adding the tiny details in my illustrations. It's really tempting to want to skip over tiny details or cut corners on them, but I found that they can often pull a whole piece together. So for example, in this cactus, adding the tiny marks, which are the shadows of the paws, really helped add dimension to the illustration instead of just adding the paws and have them be flat. And it's tiny things like this that will elevate your illustration with gouache as a whole. Okay, my fifth and final tip is that the colors you have and use don't matter as much as the values that you create. So let me explain this. Gouache color shifts, so you will find that you'll keep layering paint until you get to the result that you want. Do not be discouraged if you feel like you're almost done but something doesn't look right. Maybe it's not popping off the page as you would like. It probably means that you haven't got the values quite right, which means you're not finished yet. You've got to keep layering the paint, just like I'm doing here as I realize that I need to darken the shadows. Don't give up sooner than you need to. I wish someone had told me that, because 9 times out of 10 you don't need to start over, you just need to keep going and fix your values. When I first started and this would happen to me, I would think that it didn't look good because I didn't have all the right colors, which can sometimes leave you confused as to what colors you should get. And as I mentioned earlier, a lot of the time we think more is better, but really it has nothing to do with the colors you have, but more so the values you're creating. So the different range of light and dark shades. And it doesn't matter if your colors aren't perfect to your reference. If you get the values right, your illustration or painting is going to look great because you're achieving the range of contrasts and tones that you're seeing. Okay, I really hope these tips were helpful and it was helpful to see me paint this. I'm gonna paint the other cactus and kind of leave you with a bit of a speed painting and some chill music. But do let me know if you have any questions that you'd like me to answer. I'm really more than happy if you have any curiosities about any of the tips that I've given you and you want me to expand further, I'd love to. So yeah, I hope you enjoyed this and I'll see you in my next video. Bye.